know it's all about DTFC.
Dallas Trinity fans, welcome back to another episode of Up the River, the official podcast for your Dallas Trinity FC. As always, I am your host, Savannah Humoller. We have a great episode for you guys today. Later on in the show, we have a very special guest from Wasserman to talk about the agency front and what it's like right now in women's sports. But we will get to that shortly. But first and foremost, we are entering a brand new 2026 year. Dallas Trinity FC just closed out their fall season, and they had lots to celebrate in 2025. So we're going to do a quick little recap of Dallas Trinity FC's 2025 season. It was a year that had really a little bit of everything. And from the jump, this team set the tone early. From opening day, winning against the Spokane Zephyr at the Cotton Bowl, it gave fans a glimpse of what this group really could be. And as the season rolled on, we saw some really big moments, but none bigger than the State Fair Classico, where over 22,000 fans packed at the Cotton Bowl. It was a very historic night, not just for the club, but for women's soccer in Texas. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. You finished out the spring season. You also had a coaching change go into your fall season. And Trinity found another gear, big results, strong performances, and a push that put them into a playoff conversation heading into the break. It was just a reminder of how dangerous this team could really be. Dallas Trinity FC is coming off of 3 back-to-back wins going into 2026, which is awesome. And there's a lot of momentum around this team right now as the club is preparing for this spring season ahead and what we're looking at as far as the standings go. Right now, Dallas Trinity FC starting 2026 is sitting in the 4th spot in the standings for the Gainbridge Super League. Coming up next on the show, we are so excited to talk to Spencer Wadsworth from Wasserman. He's going to give us a behind-the-scenes look at women's soccer from the agency side, how the game is growing and how players are being represented and where things are headed next. Let's get into it. Welcome into our Dallas Trinity podcast, Up the River. We are here with Spencer Wadsworth from Wasserman. Spencer, we're super excited to talk to you today. I know from an agency perspective and just learning about your background and all that you do. How are you doing? How's your week going so far? Holiday season's coming up. I hope you get a nice break coming up here soon.
Yeah, it's kind of it's off season for the players, but it's in season for the agents, I guess, is the best way to put it, you know? So just trying to move and shake, get things.
With it being kind of a busy time right now with you on the agency side, what's kind of ramping up? What are you working on the back end right now?
Well, with free agency and the way it is now, I think, with all the opportunities that women have now to go pro and play, it's kind of navigating that whole pathway, right? Having conversations, trying to match players to teams with the right, there's a lot of variables in that. So you have a lot of phone calls, back when, me, Tripp, and Charlie were growing up, we didn't have Zoom and stuff. So, we would write the coaches and things like that. And so nowadays you have Zooms and, obviously you want to make sure it's a lot of due diligence phase, and then finding players' teams and, just kind of maneuvering people into the right directions, loans, transfers, all that.
I know Tripp had some questions for you. The first one, top of the list, take us through a day in your life.
Well, I try to make sure I don't have kids yet, so my wife still plays, so it's, that will be coming. But I try to get 8 hours of sleep. I try, and then I wake up and I get my personal stuff, feed the dogs, and then I get to work. So that's usually, get to your phone and you just kind of get going right away. I work from home, and so you're just kind of, as soon as you glance into that phone, it's kind of like go time. It's 100 miles an hour, and it's just phone calls and stuff like that. So yeah, and like, right now it's just navigating teams, navigating players. It's also it sucks at this point for players, I would say, at some of them, because there's a lot of uncertainty. So it's just trying to make sure you're over communicating and making them feel comfortable with kind of the process. But I think for anyone in human psychology, worrying about the future sucks, and so it's just about making sure everyone feels okay through the process, but yeah, so just literally phone calls all day long. At some point in there, I try to get away from my phone for a couple hours, just for my own sanity, and then go to bed and rinse and repeat right now.
I'm jealous that you get 8 hours. No kid life. I remember those days. Charlie and I, we get interrupted. It's a great blessing, obviously, but we get interrupted from time to time. So before we get into some of the activity that you do once you have a player or a coach signed up in your agency, talk to us a little bit about how you go about getting quality players and coaches to sign with you. And obviously, you're well respected in the soccer world. And so I imagine that there are a lot of people that want to sign with you, whereas an up and coming agent might be out, hitting the ground, trying to figure out how to sign that next.
Look, like, there's obviously a scouting element to what we do. It's ramping up more and more every year. So, I started on the men's side, and on the men's side is normal. You go watch youth players and things like that. It wasn't really happening on the women's side because obviously up until the Olivia Moultrie stuff, players couldn't go pro under the age of 18, right? And so when Lindsay Horan went pro straight out of high school, and she was the first girl to do that, there was no NWSL. So I think people forget that. It's like she didn't choose Europe over America. It was just, that was the only way she could go. So things have changed. So when Olivia did her thing, and again, I started with Olivia when she was 11 and 12. And that was just, we both were in LA, and I saw her on YouTube, and we got connected. And so that was a very unique, and Olivia's obviously doing great now, and she's very special and different. And so when that happened, it still wasn't the norm to go watch ECNL, right? And then I would say over the last 4 to 4 years ish, I would say, is when you started kind of doing the same things as you did on the men's side, which is go watch the youth, and I won't tell all my secrets on this, but I have a whole team that helps me. It's not just me. I don't go without all of them. And we have our ways of finding players and starting relationships. And we're watching very young and just kind of moving along. And then obviously, the NIL thing came along, and then that again changed it aggressively as well. And so so things are evolving every day, I think, but it's just more of trying to stay ahead of it and try to keep up with the ever-changing stuff or ever-changing rules and things like that. But I also think, I guess where I get a little concerned is that now these days everyone feels like they need an agent because everyone else has one, and as we all know, there's a lot of comparing and stuff, and I wouldn't say that's the case. And I think a lot of my time is I want the girls to have fun, and I don't want it to become a thing where it's like something that they don't have, and then they compare and they feel like they're behind or something. And so if anything, a lot of the relationships we have is more about just assuring people they're on the right path and just to keep moving along, and not feeling like they're behind.
Makes a lot of sense. How important is this upcoming transfer window that's going on, the winter transfer window?
We've all seen them in the last year, like transfer windows are actually getting kind of wild, It's different in Europe than it is here. And I say that because it's funny, like in Europe, there'll be, the question is, how's your transfer window going, right? And there's 2 of those, I feel like being in America, like we're always in a transfer window, right? You're always kind of like trying to figure out the next move. And obviously, your league and the NWSL are on 2 different calendars, right? And on the European calendar, there's movement between those 2 leagues, right? And so you're just never, to me, like the pace is always the same. In terms of directly answering your question, I think every window is important, but I don't know if there will be huge transfers at least from my lens. There won't be any huge like monumental ones coming up, you know.
Trinity Rodman's obviously the big one everyone's keeping an eye on, but yes,
yeah, the transfer window doesn't apply to her. She can kind of do whatever she wants when she wants to do it, you know. But obviously she's the hot topic right now of figuring out.
Yep.
And I hope she, you know, she's fighting for the players, and I hope she helps. I know she's directly and indirectly trying to make a change, which is great, and I know she'll,
get done going forward. What do you think is going well in specifically the U.S. soccer ecosystem, and you kind of what areas of improvement are out there for both the Gamebridge Super League and the other pro leagues?
Well, what's going well is, I guess, zoom out, all of us, like, things can always be better, right? And I think we tend to forget, like, how good like some of the good things that are going on in this in the ecosystem, and then if you compare it to Europe, like, I'd say what's happening in America as a whole is like, multiples better what's happening around the rest of the world, from top to bottom. And forget what divisions and levels and all that. The fact is people want to be part of women's soccer in the US. And I think that's really, really good. Right. And, obviously people are behind it and supporting it. People are losing money, but it's still going to move along. And I think that people are sticking to it. Right. I think the fear in previous times, in our sport, women's sports in general, is that people will just bail as soon as, a lot of money was lost, and I do think as long as everyone can stick to it, I think, whatever market you're in will continue to grow and it'll become normal. Like, you guys, we grew up in Dallas together. Remember Dallas Burn, and then to FC,
Yes.
We couldn't really watch Dallas Burn on TV. I mean, we kind of could, but we didn't really go to the games, but we wanted to be pro soccer players.
Yeah.
And now, like, the young girls, like, that are coming up going pro early, like, they got to watch it all on TV, right? And so that next generation will get to do that. And so, what y'all are doing in Dallas, I think, is unreal, and you've connected well with the youth. And so, yeah, like, one player that sticks out to me a lot is like Celie Strawn, what you've done for her, like, and provided she's been able to get pro games and stuff, and, really early in her career. So I think, like, those things didn't exist. And then it left people wondering, like, there are certain players that max out the level they're at 16 years old, and they need that next step. And, everyone's journey is different, like I said, but, I do think that stuff is going really, really well. So, and I can tell you globally, we're like moving like at like a light years pace compared to everywhere else.
It's part of why we got involved to begin with, is the growth of women's soccer. And obviously, being from North Texas and seeing all the youth activity here and giving those young girls an opportunity to aspire to be, at the pro level in their own backyard at home. Speaking of home, we had a great success story with you last season. Sam Mesa, and maybe talk to us a little bit about how you envisioned that and how that worked out, and if you see opportunities like that continuing to come to fruition down the road.
Persevered and fought through adversity a lot. I think, and this isn't specific to her, I think the players that want to be pro, want to be elite, when do they go through adversity, right? It's like, and I could sit and talk forever about how, like, I would love for them to go through it earlier because they've already gone through it and they know how to handle it, but it's like any of us that go through a hard time in life. Like, the first time you deal with a down, like, it's not easy, right? And if, like, we're all good at what we do in every environment that we're in, and all of a sudden you enter a new environment and you're a rookie again, or you've never been a rookie, right? Or, but, whatever, I think it's an adjustment, and so it was a huge credit to Sam that she was willing to go on loan, because I think a lot of people see it as, and when I say this, demotion, not demotion because of the league, just that, hey, I didn't make it at my team right this second, and so now I have to go do something else, right? And so I think that that's like really, really something that, a lot of people have a problem doing, but she went and did it. Y'all provided this unreal opportunity for her, and honestly, without y'all, she wouldn't be where she's at now. Like that is a fact. And I want more players to look at that and do what they need to do to have success, but I think it's a credit to her to like willingness and awareness to want to do it. So that's I think, yeah, without y'all,
we wouldn't have been in the position we were halfway through the season. Basically went undefeated at home until the last game, and finished third ultimately for the entire season. But she was a difference maker, obviously, player of the half year for the entire Super League. And so it's a blessing to have her, and it's awesome to just be her biggest fan as she went on to earn minutes at Seattle and then get the call up to the 23s and then the senior national team. I was hoping to see her up in Bristol. We had a deaf men's and women's senior national team doubleheader up there, but I think she was out of commission for that one for a brief minute. But yeah, we're always looking for the next success story like that. We view ourselves as a career accelerator. So someone like Sealy, who now has opportunities to get pro minutes, can really accelerate their career. Someone like a Sam Mesa or even a Deb Abiodun, who came over from Washington, on loan, they weren't getting the minutes or they weren't getting the attention that they probably deserved. And now, boom, get some really good minutes, some good opportunities, some development chances with our club and in the Gainbridge Super League, and then go on and continue your journey and crush it. So it's been fun to watch that. Charlie, don't let me hijack the whole conversation. If you've got anything to add or share. We've been through adversity ourselves in our playing career. I know, Charlie, watching college, myself in college too. We've had our highs and lows, as we can imagine.
I think the important thing to highlight in all this is playing. Like, you need to play, okay? And it's not as simple as like, hey, like I'm gonna go to NWSL because everyone else is doing it. I'm just gonna play. Like, it doesn't matter where you're playing. You need to be playing. And look, like, there is something to say, yes, like when you're going from college to the next level, you need a time period of adjustment where you're just training and stuff like that. But when push comes to shove, you need to be on the field and be getting minutes and meaningful minutes, right? And so there's a threshold to it, and so it's not a knock on college, but when you're subbing in and out all the time and you're not conditioning the girls to be able to play 90s, that's a problem, a big one. And to me, whatever it is, like, you can go play 90 minutes and make an impact. Like, there's emotional and mental growth with that, not just physical, so I think that's obviously very important and the most important thing out there.
Those game minutes are so different than training minutes. It's that experience that elevates you and prepares you to get better and get to the level you want to get to. On our league as a whole, I mean, obviously you're
hijacking my time.
Sorry.
I thought I was going to get to ask a question.
Go for it.
No, Spencer, obviously you're a former player, right? And I think in a lot of ways, like, your start in this industry is from your relationships on the men's side, coming through that. I'm curious, like, what was your why? Like, when you first made the jump to become an agent, like, clearly, like, you saw something or something resonated with you, whether it was like through your own experience or through the experience of Breck or some of the others that were there in the early days. Like, what drove you to do what you're doing?
I love my friends, people that know me. Like, I'm like super loyal. Like, all I care about is I'm an only child, so it's also I wanted brothers and stuff, so but it was like it was very simple. It's like I just saw the agents they had weren't protecting them in the way that I think, like, how would you protect your family? How would you protect your brother or your sister? Like, that's just what you do. And like, it's very simple to do that. Just do the right thing, protect them at all costs, obviously handle things professionally. But I was like, if I had that lens and I looked through that, I know that I will figure out what I need to figure out, And so as you get older, your parents, the cliches they tell you as a kid, you become a walking cliche. When you're younger, you're like, yeah, right. Like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, like, relationships are everything, and doing the right thing is pretty easy to do, and just being honest. So I knew if I did those things, my first two players were Lee and Breck. They're my best friends, Lee Wynn and Breck Shea. And they both took a chance on me too. it took a little bit for me to get there because they asked me a couple of times and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not going to ruin your life. And so I like, but it was that simple. That was my why is like I wanted to do the right thing. And then like as I grew, my why on the women's side is like I always thought it was really cool that the girls love the game as much as the guys. And when I was younger, we always had people like Nikki Washington or Allison Brill or whoever. They would always play pickup with us, and I thought that was awesome, right? And then it started there, and then I was, my why now is when these young girls are taking a
Someone was
risk.
detected at your Seattle front door.
Oh my God, sorry. When these young girls are taking a risk, to forego college, and people are like, oh, that's they're going against the system or what's normal, and they have elite mentalities, and I seeing them go and do that and then fulfill their dreams and make a really nice living, and hopefully with where things are at now, they can do well enough if they're smart with their money, they don't have to work again. Like that is my why. That would be that's really cool to me to see them succeed and fulfill their dreams. Like personally, that is like kind of why I do things now. So, but before, like it started with just, these are my best friends, I love them, I'm going to kill everyone for them. So like that's just what it was.
Your transition from the men's game to the women's game. So for those that don't know you, how did that come about? What's the origin there?
That first year, I worked with a guy named Paul McDonough. Y'all know Paul. And so Paul was, my first mentor, and we signed really quickly a few top young men's players. So Darlington Nagby, Teal Bunbury, we had Will Trapp, Juan Agadello, that was real quick. And then I signed Tobin Heath, and she was my first player ever, female player. And we knew each other because I represented Zach Lloyd, and Zach Lloyd's wife was her best friend. And I went to Duke, she went to UNC. And so ironically, I watched her play in college, and she was my favorite player when I was still playing. And then we got connected in Dallas one off season when we were all playing pickup. And then I wasn't at Wasserman yet. And she kind of took a chance on me similarly. And the difference is at that time was there was no league. So all the girls were paid by the federation. And you didn't do anything from a club perspective. The only way as an agent you made your money was on marketing. So, and then social media started, right? Social media, Instagram started in 2013 or something. And then, so I had Tobin went to PSG against US Soccer's wishes. So she was like, I'm doing this. And then she went and did it. And then Lindsay was there. And then I assigned Lindsay. And then it kind of, it was easy, to kind of, I guess, drift over. But I guess I would say when I worked at Tobin and Lindsay, you're working with the best in the world, right? American girls are literally the best in the world. So when I saw how their mentalities were insanely elite, and if you tell a girl you do A, B, C, and D, it'll equal E, they'll do all of it, right? I don't mean to be offensive, but I think on the men's side, if they'll do some of A, they'll do B, they'll skip C, and then they'll kind of do D. They won't get to E, and they'll be like, why didn't it equal this, And so just the ones in my in my experience, and that's not every men's player, but that was just generally speaking. And so then the girls started winning, and I signed Ashlyn Harris and a few others, and it was just fun. And to me, it developed a different part of me, because on the men's side, there really was no marketing. There was some, but the women's side, it was only marketing because they were all paid by the federation. So it helped me with the men's side because I got to know all the brand partners. I was in it kind of before. I was obviously in the women's space before everyone. So that's the only way you could do it. So, not a plug for Wasserman here, but fast forward to now, that is kind of our DNA is. So you never had that variable on the women's side of, how much money are they making from their club team? I need to provide for my family, because they all were paid the same. So you just did marketing. So you wanted to get them in the best developmental pathway, get them to the national team, and then crush it in marketing. That's what it is. And so I enjoyed it. Fast forward to now, best friends got older. women started winning the World Cups and stuff, and I just gravitated more to the women's.
A lot of these athletes now have so much outside pressure. How do you advise them to really focus in on their craft and their performance to be a better athlete with all of the things that they have to deal with all the time?
Make sure there is no pressure. So maybe I'm getting older here, but I actually don't. I hate hype. Hype does nothing for you. Hype, when you're posting on social media, you're doing all this stuff. When you create this hype that has expectations, you're not there yet, then now every time you don't do something, people have something to say. And I think it actually it's counterintuitive to where you want to go, right? I'd rather kind of let actions speak versus words. And so to me, it's about making sure they're focused on the right things, doing things for the right reasons, right? Chasing headlines. Like, if it paid you millions of dollars, like, okay, maybe I could wrap my head around it, but it doesn't help you at all. It might get you a couple followers, but again, that doesn't translate into anything. That translates into more hype, and more hype comes with more expectations. And I went through that honestly with Breck, and I think you hear it all the time. Like in the U.S., the media creates the hype. So in some instances, I see on the women's side that individuals will create their own hype, and they don't realize that that's not healthy. And I will be very direct and tell them that. On like what I went through with Breck, and I think he would be the first one to tell you, like, it's not fun. Like, when everyone expects all these things of you and you're just trying to have a good time and you're playing a sport that you love, it is not, it doesn't help anything, so and it doesn't pay you anymore. It helps nothing. So I guess to answer your question more directly, I spend my day trying to educate people why we shouldn't do certain things and doing things for the right reasons at the right time, and really let your play speak for itself. Because if you're good, people will talk about it. I promise you.
And I'm a buyer on, it's what your actions do that speaks the loudest. It's not what your hype is, what you're supposed to be doing, right? I was never a hype player. I was never that good either to generate some of that. But talking about a little bit more on the Super League, because obviously we are a league that has been hyped up as another opportunity for top professional players to come and play and continue their careers. How do you see, or I guess, like, what advice would you have for players considering the Gainbridge Super League, and how would you navigate those decisions that they're making?
I think kind of what I just said is everyone's like people need to analyze the individual opportunity that's in front of their face and with the variables that are going to lead to success, right? Everyone wants to go to level 10 before, going 1 through 9, right? And to me, I tell everyone to keep their options open and to listen, because it's not about the shiny bright toy that you're seeing, right? And back to the point of like playing, do you want to be on a roster or do you want to be on the field? And so those are things that you have to sift through, and again, this is what I'm talking about with the USL. It's providing opportunity, right? Sam Meza doesn't go to the national team if she just stays on the roster, right? And everyone agrees with that. So it's like, you don't need to sign with NWSL to go on loan. You can sign directly with the USLs, with the Super League, right? Like, it doesn't have to be that way, right? And I think, y'all brought up a good point. Like, Ashlyn Puerta, I don't represent her, but she's getting called in and she's in the US, like she's in the USL because she's playing, and if she keeps playing and she's playing well, she'll get sold and she'll move on and she'll do that, and so I do think everyone that doesn't necessarily want to sell their best players, but I think that's just more of like, accepting the reality piece of it. But regardless, like, Jacksonville's part of her journey, and that's very healthy.
Well, Spencer, thank you for your time today and jumping on Up the River, our Dallas Trinity FC podcast. Join us Saturday, January 31st at the Cotton Bowl at 4 p.m. Central Time as Dallas Trinity FC faces off against Brooklyn FC. We hope to see all of the fans there in attendance, and thank you so much for once again listening to another podcast of Up the River, Dallas Trinity FC's official podcast.
You know it's all about D.